Let us live to see another episode. Welcome in to the Spring Blake College Football Show. Today is Friday, August 8th. I'm Spring Blake. This is a college football show, your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knower show. Thank you guys for tuning back in. If this is your first time here, make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Spring Blake CFB. That is Twitter and TikTok primarily. Make sure if you are listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, support, share with friends. If you're on YouTube, appreciate the setup. Love what I have going on here. JMU football helmet, Wilson, Post Malone, Stoney, White Iverson basketball, Busch Light behind me on my right, Spring Blake signed to me on my left. I probably don't need to say that every episode, but I really do love this studio that I've set up in a spare bedroom. If you're on the YouTube channel, make sure to like, follow, subscribe to the channel, share it as well too. If you're coming back, I already have it under the assumption you have done all those things. But if you have not, please go ahead and just take a second to recognize, okay, did I, didn't I? And please do. If you like this show, I like you. I'll try and give you as great of content as I can as we move forward toward what should be an electric college football season. I also want to give a thanks to Danny K Designs, who did all of our images for this show, the logo, the graphic you see. Head over on Instagram to Danny K, that's DANIKAY.design on Instagram. If you need any work done in the graphic design, illustration market, she's fantastic. And a big thank you to the Spice and Tea Exchange of Nashville for being our presenting sponsor. Okay, so now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's go into what we're diving into today. We've got some quick notes from fall camp. We're about a little over a week in. We had some injury news that we want to keep an eye on as we go through the season. We'll do that at the beginning of every time if there's stuff that is pertinent to the sport as a whole. And then we're going to go into a few couple things. The first being the first edition of First Blake. That's a lot of firsts. It's First Blake, First Take. It's really dumb. It's really silly. But it's going to essentially be what First Take is. It's either going to be a very impassioned rant from your boy over here, or it's going to be some hot, trendy topics, hot takes that we want to get out there on this show. So we're going to go into First Blake in just a little bit, and then we're going to finish talking about some of the regression teams in this sport for the upcoming year. Our first two episodes, which if you're new here, make sure to check out. Episode 1, we had some great, what are the big storylines of college football heading into the new year? And on Wednesday, I gave you my top 16 teams in the nation. You can find a bunch of great clips on TikTok and YouTube as well. So we've talked a lot about the good in this sport, what is captivating. I obviously want to spend a little bit of time talking about what teams may not live up to the expectations. You know, if certain teams are going to be rising to the top, that means they're going to push some other teams down. So I've got 5 teams that we're going to talk about that maybe I just don't see having the jump that maybe many are expecting them to take or to hold after last season.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
So yes, we're locked and loaded. Going to try and keep things a little bit quicker than we did on last episode. Would love for these to stay in that 45 to 50 minute range. I'll be keeping myself on a shot clock to make sure that we keep that rolling through. But let's dive into news from fall camps. The one thing that is, I think, funniest about college football is that they don't really have to disclose much of anything to you. Whether that be guys not participating. You can close practices at certain universities. Injuries don't pop up until the week of the season or 15 minutes before their game. I remember I was covering James Madison football for the Breeze as a junior or senior, and coming off what I believe was a national championship season. It was a big year. They started at North Carolina State, huge game going up against FBS level competition because they were in the FCS at that time. And in the summer, you're just covering the team. We were there a few weeks early, and we just happened to notice, okay, yep, All-American corner. He's just kind of walking around. He does have a little bit of a boot on, but, you know, the coaches and everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's fine. We're just playing it slow with him. And then 15 minutes before kickoff, boom, oh, he's actually out for the season. So college football is a little bit funny like that, where they really can just hide everything as long as they want. And so let's dive in. We have 3 major programs in the SEC that have what people are calling minor injuries, but something to keep an eye on. So at Oklahoma, a team that I have in my top 10. I lauded about the running back depth that they had, and a few of those guys seem to be a little banged up. 3 guys not fully participating right now, including star transfer Jaden Ott. All of the injuries, like I said, described as minor, but definitely something we'll want to monitor as this this fall camp goes on, because if the offensive line has worries for me at Oklahoma and the running backs are banged up, that offense can definitely become one-dimensional very quickly. So have to keep an eye on at the running back room at Oklahoma. At LSU, I think everybody had a heart attack on Wednesday when LSU star quarterback Garrett Nussmeier was helped off the field in an injury sustained during practice. Again, he is considered to be fine, which is a massive sigh of relief, but you never know the full extent given what these programs are allowed to hide on a daily basis. Maybe by the time that this show comes out, he's already returned to practice, but as we're taping, there's nothing new that's come out about Thursday. And then last, at Florida, huge situation to monitor with DJ Lagway, we spoke about on last episode. He came back to practice, but is rumored to be about 75 to 80% healthy a week into camp. The shoulder does appear to be in a good spot. He had surgery in the offseason, and he has spent time throwing to all of his receivers and tight ends at camp, but is yet to really be a full participant as they monitor his calf injury. Now, as everybody else is saying, it's good to see him throwing. The calf, they really want to slow play things here. As I said, DJ Lagway might be as important to Florida as any individual player is important to any program in the sport right now. So they want to slow play it, avoid any potential setbacks, but obviously one of the biggest rising names in the sport. We're going to keep an eye on it the last few weeks. But that's really the major stuff going on in fall camp. Now we can get back into the show stuff.
My name's Blake.
All right, so we're moving into the first ever First Blake. And just as I'm about to start doing this, I realized that I really should have put on a nice suit and tie, done a whole angry Stephen A. Smith thing. Maybe we'll get that going for the next time around. Maybe I'd have to take the suit and rip the sleeves off, though, because number 1 rule, sleeves stay off, hat stays on. I want to talk about college football fans and those that support major programs in this sport needing to recalibrate their expectations on what a good season is in the new era of college football. In the world of playoff expansion, super conferences now in the SEC and Big Ten, and the elimination of divisions within those conferences, the year-to-year variance you're going to get in this sport is far more significant than it ever has been. There's simply just too many talented teams in the Big Ten and SEC to churn out 12-0 seasons at the top, and even, a fair shot of 11-1s and 10-2s. It's just not going to be as likely as it was back in the day. And it's not just the fact that these teams all have to play one another on the same field. Georgia, for instance, this year has a lighter schedule than some other teams. You are going to have those years where the slate isn't as bad as the year before. But it's also the world of NIL that has leveled the playing field. The Alabamas and the Georgias of the last decade are still just as fantastic as they always have been, but they just no longer have this substantial edge on depth at every major position like they did 5 years ago, because a lot of those guys that used to be waiting in the wing for their opportunities can make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, at other top programs. Now, personally, I think it boils down to just a one-game adjustment. 10-2 is the new 11-1, 11-1 is the new 12-0, 9-3 is the new 10-2, 8-4 the new 9-3, so on and so forth. One game recalibration in this new era of college football. I know the oblivious and obnoxious fans of this sport will refuse to accept the new reality that surrounds their teams because they just love to yell about how good things were in the olden days. But we talk to the ball knowers on this show. So as a group of ball knowers, let's start having these hard but true conversations. Alabama's 9-3 campaign last year was a great season. And if they went 9-3 again this year, that is another great season. If LSU doesn't take a step forward and is still a 9-3 team in the regular season, that is a great college football season. If Georgia takes a step back into a 3-loss regular season, another great college football season. We don't need to be wondering, oh no, has Kirby Smart lost his edge? If Indiana in the Big Ten this year, is still a great team but loses 1 or 2 extra games, we still need to consider a 10-2 or 9-3 team in the Big Ten as this amazing accomplishment. And we can step beyond just those top teams. If Oklahoma or Florida even take the smallest step forward this year as an 8-4 program, we don't need to be saying Venables and Napier are still on the hot seat. And we have to recognize that even being on the cusp of the playoffs with a gauntlet of a schedule is far more impressive enough of a job. The years of undefeated records and 11-1 campaigns for the most part are out the window. And if we want to get back to truly appreciating the impressive feats in this sport, it's going to require us to touch grass and realize what it takes to be great in the new era of college football. So there it is, first Blake. I don't know how much I love that. We may tinker with that. I just thought first Blake was funny and I wanted to talk about resetting expectations. But all in all, that's great. Let's get into talking some regression teams in this sport now.
Blake. What?
All right, so as I said at the top, we spent the first 2 shows talking about the more exciting things happening in this sport. Heisman contenders, title contenders, teams ready to make that next jump. In order for teams to make that jump, some teams are going to need to take a step back and succumb to what might be considered underwhelming seasons. Not to say these teams are bad or they're falling off a cliff, but I've got 5 teams here that I think will fall short of what maybe the team, fan base, national expectations may be. And so I want to get my spiciest one out first, so let's rip the Band-Aid right off. I think South Carolina is in for a really disappointing season when you consider how things finished last year. Now, they have the 2 baddest dudes on the planet. Dylan Stewart on the edge, Lenore Sellers at quarterback. They're awesome. But here's the simple truth about football. You cannot win behind just 2 elite talents and a lot of questions surrounding them. The defense took a big hit last year. I think, most of the front 7 is new now, and I believe 14 total guys have signed contracts in the NFL since last season. So a ton of turnover on defense, especially the front 7. I think they're a middle-of-the-pack team at tailback, receiver, defensive line, and in the secondary, while having a really shaky offensive line and linebacker room. Now, it's not to say that they won't have players grow into these expanded roles and these opportunities that are available for them. But as we sit here on August 8th, they are totally valid concerns. And then there's also this. For as much as I love the athletes they have on this team, and I'm primarily talking about Lenore Sellers and Nick Harbor at wide receiver, I think they also need to improve as better football players and maybe just not try to rely on being specimens and having that overcome some of their maybe more fine-tuned, lacking technique. Both players are more than capable of making those leaps. I just don't think we've seen them yet. I'd love for Lenoris to improve upon his accuracy and become a better 3-level thrower. And I'd love for Nick Harbor to be a better route runner and maybe have more than 400 receiving yards in a season. But these things haven't happened yet. And with the road they have ahead of them, it gets pretty shaky to think that they're going to stay right where they were at the end of last season. Their schedule goes from the 34th most difficult last season to the 4th most difficult this year. They get Oklahoma, Bama, and Clemson at home, but have to travel to LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, and Texas A&M. All of those teams, except maybe Ole Miss and Missouri, those are the 2 teams I'd give you a toss-up. Oklahoma, Bama, Clemson, LSU, A&M, I think have better rosters and better teams. And I also don't think they have a slouch of an opponent to open the season as well. I think Virginia Tech is set for a bounce-back year, and if that game is, difficult to get out of, I think it says a lot about where this season might be going. South Carolina rode some amazing momentum last year and took advantage of really shaky SEC teams. They did still, however, run super hot and cold at times, and when you mix that with a roster overhaul and a far more difficult schedule, I'm out. And the last thing that I'll say about South Carolina, do not come back to this show or to this TikTok and yell at me when your team starts off 4-1 or 5-0. The front of that schedule is pretty light. If we're sitting here and you're coming back to me in early October, save the arguments until the end of the season when we've got a full year to evaluate what just happened, and then we can talk. But yes, South Carolina, one of the 5 teams I expect to take a pretty substantial step back this season.
You want to go to war, Balaki?
All right, so regression team number 2. I don't think this one is nearly as hot of a take, but it's definitely a team that's going to take a step back. Let's head to the ACC, and it's the Syracuse Orange under head coach Fran Brown. Shout out to all my people in upstate New York, but it's kind of expected this is going to be a little bit of a drawback in 2025. And it's just the 2 biggest reasons that teams regress year over year: roster overhaul and a change in the schedule. These are all the following guys that are out the door for Syracuse from last season. It's QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, tight end 1, the center, left guard, right tackle are gone, another guard got injured in the spring. They lose their top edge and a starter in the middle, their top tackler at linebacker, and 2 full-year starters in the secondary to go with another guy that started half the season in the secondary. So then you lose all those guys. Okay, well, hopefully they've retooled. Well, quarterback play is probably in the bottom half of the country this season. Same with the run game and the offensive line. The receiver room still has some dudes to where, like, okay, maybe it's a top 50 unit, but it's a lot closer to 50 than it is to 1. The schedule last year was 49th in total difficulty. Not terrible in the ACC, still nothing too tough. That number is now up to 5th in the country. They open the season with Tennessee, have Notre Dame as a part of their non-con, and also have to face the top 4 and the top 7 of the top 9 teams in the preseason poll. So all the top 4 teams in the ACC they have to play, and 7 of the top 9 are on the schedule. Oh, wait, all those top 4 teams they have to face, all on the road. That is a brutal change in schedule for Fran Brown. I thought he was unbelievable in his first season, and I think everything fell into place for them to pull off a 10-win campaign. But I also think the ACC is probably set in a point this year where moving forward, 1 to 2 teams are just going to hit the schedule and portal exactly the right way for a year and then have to take their lumps the following season. I think that's Syracuse. I don't think it's a hot take. They're not going to be a 10-win team this year. I hope they can still get to that bowl eligibility. I would say they're in that 6 to 7 win range heading into 2025.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
All right, so we've hit the SEC, we've hit the ACC. Let's head to the Big 12. And we're going to get a little bit back to the steamier side because I've got the Arizona State Sun Devils. And yes, that's last year's Big 12 champs and a final 8 team in the college football playoffs, taking a bit of a step back this year. Now, unlike some of the other teams I've mentioned, this is not an instance where they lost everybody and are left scrambling to put the pieces back together. ASU actually returns the most starters in college football from a season prior. I think it's 10 on defense, 7 on offense, including 4 of their offensive linemen. I do think they have one of the better quarterbacks in the country in Sam Leavitt. Jordan Tyson out wide might be the number 1 receiver heading into this year's upcoming draft. But that also leaves a lot of position groups that I think are either just fine or worse. And I think the reality of the situation is that last year they were also just fine and maybe just had a few things go their way. Kenny Dillingham's team was one of the most advantageous in football last year. The turnover margin was plus 14, 6th best number in the nation. History shows that you really can't count on turnover luck to repeat year over year, and I believe the number is, there's a 70% chance that number takes a significant step back, and that would be, I think, the difference is of plus or minus 5 to 6, I believe. So then you're talking about getting closer to the mean, and I think, as again, taking advantage of that is what played a huge role into Arizona State's success in getting hot last season. And then there's the schedule. You know, Arizona had the 69th easiest schedule last year. Nice. And the easiest in the Big 12. It bumps up into the top 40 this year, which is not super difficult. It's not like a top 5 to 10 schedule. No one really does have that in the Big 12. But it's also now the 8th hardest in the conference. So you go from the easiest in the conference, now it's right in the middle of the pack. And their toughest games on the schedule, that being Baylor, Utah, and Iowa State, are all on the road. So yes, they bring everybody back. there's still parts of the roster I think were a little bit of a mirage. They do lose the heart of the team, and everybody's talked about that. You know, Cam Scattaboo was the vocal leader on the field, off the field. He was kind of the motor, the engine that had them running so hot. He's now in the NFL. I don't think it's super hard to replace running backs, but maybe the voice or the leadership quality, there might not be another guy in that room that really takes it on in 2025. So you've got that, you've got the increase in difficulty in the schedule, and you've also got turnover luck regressing a little bit to the mean. Those are the reasons why I think they're going to take a step back. And I love Kenny Dillingham. I think he is one of the more fun head coaches in the sport. He's great for the sport. And I do think, as I said, there's talented players on the roster, and it's super experienced. They're building off momentum from last year. They're not going to fall off a cliff. They're not vanishing forever. And this is probably the one team in these 5 that I'm talking about that I am most concerned about proving me wrong. I'm just saying they probably hit everything at the perfect time last season and are most likely going to fall outside of the playoff conversation in a conference that may only see its conference champion get in. So that's why I think Arizona State takes a little bit of a step back this upcoming season.
My name's Blake.
So we've got 2 regression teams left. I'm just going to say it right now. One, we're speeding through this episode. Shout out to you guys. On a Friday, you're going to get out of here quick and early and go enjoy your weekends. I'm going to as well. We've got 2 more regression teams to discuss, and I'll just say it right now. Keep listening. I got a jewel for you at number 5. I think it's, the creative juices were flowing in this brain last night when we were preparing this doc. For team number 4, regression team number 4, we're going to stay in the Big 12, where I think we can all agree, kind of like with Syracuse in the ACC, it's going to be a less raucous environment in Mormon country. I've got the BYU Cougars taking a step back after an 11-win season in 2024. I remember covering the sport last year and just not being able to explain what was happening at BYU. It felt like voodoo magic at times, some crazy comebacks, blowouts. I remember when they went to go play Kansas State, I was like, Kansas State is going to shut this thing up. They're going to rout them. And it was punt return for a touchdown, kickoff return for a touchdown, pick 6. It was just one of those games that 10 minutes in, I was like, oh, what happened here? It felt like a lot of that last season at BYU. And all I could really say last year is that I thought it was fool's gold. And now we're back in 2025 to take advantage of that opportunity. So they obviously lose Jake Retzloff after he has to transfer out. Really unfortunate situation there for the quarterback. Is he at App State now, I believe? I think he's at App State. Anywho, McKay Hillstead is probably in line to start, although the true freshman Bear Bachmeier, really talented prospect, kind of this BYU's got some money type prospect that they got bringing Bear Bachmeier in. Could push to see the field at some point. I don't know how things are going at camp right now. Either way, both guys are going to be a step below what Jake Retzloff was able to give them last season. Their best unit is probably linebacker, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, and wideout isn't awful either. They got Chase Roberts and then brought in Bear's brother Tiger. Yes, you heard that right, Bear and Tiger Bachmeier, who comes in from Stanford. Decent tandem at wideout there, but there's nothing super strong or convincing outside of them in the trenches, at running back, or in the secondary. So I just gave you all these reasons why, roster-wise, it kind of makes sense that it was a little fool's gold last year. It makes sense for them to take a step back. They also did benefit from the schedule in the Big 12, just like Arizona State did last year. They had the second easiest in the conference, and it'll be slightly harder this year. It doesn't make the jump Arizona State's did, but it is going to be a little bit more difficult. 2 of their toughest games are on the road. That's Texas Tech and Iowa State, and they also have to face a tough Utah team at home. But that's really it when it comes to super difficult matchups. Really, when it comes down to BYU, this is kind of just taking a easy stab at a team that's going to regress. 11 wins last year was wacky. I just don't see them catching fire 2 years in a row. I got the Cougars taking a step back into maybe the middle of the pack when it comes to the Big 12 this year.
Blake.
What?
All right, and the moment I have been waiting for this entire episode. And it's not just because I'm excited to talk about this team regressing. I actually hate to talk bad about one of my favorite hosses in this sport. But I think after getting all the love and the praise in the world, starting at kind of the end of last regular season and coming up to, even still this week in the world of college football, Brett Bielema and his Fighting Illini are going to regress this upcoming season and not take maybe the highly anticipated step most people expect them to. So I think Illinois is a little bit of a mirage, and I'm going to try out a little fun parallel for you guys because I am watching Bachelor in Paradise this summer. Brett Bielema and Illinois are the hot new addition to the show that pops in a week or two in and catches your eye immediately. Now, not only are they hot on the surface, physically, you're like, oh shit, they're also fresh meat, a new face that you get to look at after you've been checking out the same people for the last week or so. It's not just exciting, but refreshing as well. What is better than that in this sport? So, of course, you got to get to know them, pull them for a chat, just dying to get to know more. And it takes all of maybe 15 minutes for you to realize you fell for the biggest mirage in the world. They got bad breath. They're talking about their daddy issues. They've got no job. The whole 9 yards. That's Illinois this upcoming season. So let's just peel back the curtain on what they did last year. This is the same team we're talking about in the top 10 to 15 conversation that mustered 16 total points against Oregon and Penn State. Two great teams, two really good defenses, I'll give you that. But they also let Minnesota beat them at home, could barely get by a bad Nebraska team and a retooling Kansas early in the year, let up 30 points to Rutgers and Northwestern, and 49 to freaking Purdue? Even their win against Michigan last year was the most disgusting game of the year and was at a point where Michigan's offense couldn't do simple math. And somehow, we finished this season saying they were a top 15 caliber team. Now, they're not a bad football program. Their secondary should be really good. It honestly has become one of those positional groups year in, year out where they have like a new dude taking over. They've got one of the top guys in this upcoming draft at corner. I think Luke Altmaier is a serviceable and experienced quarterback, but the rest of the roster, it's just fine. It's not great. It's not super strong, especially in a conference like the Big Ten where you've got the Ohio States and the Oregons and the Penn States and the Michigans of the world. The talent disparity between those programs and Illinois is significant. And yet we're talking about Illinois rivaling Michigan and being like that fourth team in this great conference. I just don't see it. And then especially on the schedule this year, for one, I could see Duke giving them real fits in week 2 as part of their non-conference schedule. I think Indiana and USC are better from a talent standpoint. Definitely think Ohio State will waltz right by them. And that doesn't even mention a tough road trip to what I believe is an ascending Washington program. And if they struggled to beat Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern last year, what's to say it won't happen again this year? This team had some insane results last year. The idea of Illinois and Brett Bielema being a legit playoff contender is fresh and exciting on the surface because who doesn't want Brett Bielema and Illinois to be something? But the more you look in, the more you realize there's just not a whole lot of tangible evidence to back that up. And it's really just our own need or desire to want them to be something new and special. So for those reasons, I'm out on Illinois this year. I still think they're kind of like a frisky team in the Big Ten, but in terms of where I'd place them, and we'll get into a Big Ten preview next week, I think they're in that like 6 to 9 range in the conference. I think there's a lot of holes on this team, and I think that, look, I want it too. I want Brett Bielema to be one of the dudes in this sport, but like, pulling them for a chat, sitting down with them for 15 minutes, I see a lot of issues for this upcoming season. So that's why I'm out on Illinois, along with why I'm out on BYU, Syracuse, South Carolina, and Arizona State. And look at this, man. We're at a half hour. Maybe Friday's pod should just be like a nice quick 30 minutes and get you on your merry day. that wraps up the first week of the Spring Break College Football Show. I want to thank you guys, and again, I hate to sound like stupid and corny, but like I love doing this so much, and it has made me feel really nice to see, the videos on TikTok blowing up in the way they do, and the interaction I'm getting on there. YouTube, getting subscribers and comments, like that makes me feel good about what we're doing here. It makes me want to continue to do it more. It makes me want to put even more effort into this. So I'm hopeful that this can lead to a career one day. I will be thankful to each and every one of you for supporting, listening, watching this show. That's me getting cheesy and corny. We're 3 episodes in. They're going to let us live to see another few ones. Next week's schedule, I'm actually out of town. I'm going to be in upstate New York for my birthday and my best friend's wedding. But we have 4 great episodes coming out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the following Monday. It's conference previews and predictions time. So we'll get into all that next week. Thank you guys one final time because I can't say it enough. I appreciate you. I love you. I'll talk to you next Monday. Peace.